Today we're making Funfetti birthday cake. Hi everyone, welcome to Black Cat Kitchen. I hope you're doing well. Today is a very special episode because it's my birthday. To celebrate, we'll be making my favorite Funfetti birthday cake. You've probably had this cake out of a box mix, but I'm going to show you the perfect way to make it from scratch right at home. And since it's my birthday, you have to subscribe because it's my birthday. It's my only wish. Well, that and world peace and hundreds of cats. But please subscribe. I mean, it is my birthday. See the description below for a list of ingredients. I think it's important to start off by discussing what Funfetti is. Funfetti are just like sprinkles, but they're little round bits in rainbow colors. The reason why you'll use Funfetti in this recipe is because they don't bleed when you mix them into a batter. If you can't find Funfetti, which I've linked down below, you can also use sprinkles or jimmies. Those also won't bleed in your recipe. However, you don't want to use nonpareils or hundreds and thousands. Those do bleed when you mix them with liquids, and it will make your cake look less than desirable. I've preheated the oven to 160 degrees Celsius fan. If you don't have a fan oven, turn your oven on to 180 degrees Celsius or 350 degrees Fahrenheit. I've lined two 8-inch 20-centimeter pans with parchment paper and buttered the outside and dusted with flour. These will be ready for our cake mix. Here's a great little trick to make sure your cake layers are nice and even. Pop your mixing bowl on your scale and make a note of the weight. When your batter has been mixed in this bowl, you'll be able to subtract the weight of the bowl so you have just the weight of the batter. That way you can evenly divide it between your cake pans. To a separate mixing bowl, we're going to add 300 grams of cake flour. It's a little bit lighter and allows for a really nice fluffy cake. Then we're adding 1 tablespoon, 12 grams of baking powder, and half a teaspoon of salt. And just whisk that together. We're going to set that aside while we mix our wet ingredients. To our large mixing bowl, I've put 170 grams of unsalted butter. To this, I'm adding 300 grams of sugar. We're going to whip this together until it's light and fluffy. I'm going to scrape down the sides just one time and give it one more beating just to make sure that sugar is starting to dissolve. To our butter mix, we're going to add 2 egg yolks, 60 milliliters of a neutral flavored oil, I'm just using vegetable oil, a teaspoon and a half or so of vanilla. Make sure you're using real vanilla extract, very important in this recipe, and a half a teaspoon of almond extract. Again, making sure that you're using the real stuff. Imitation will not taste nice. Also, be sure not to add too much almond extract. It can be very overpowering. Now let's mix this all together. Now that our wet ingredients are thoroughly combined, we're going to add our flour with 250 milliliters of milk. We're going to add this in stages, starting with flour and then milk, and always ending with flour. So put in a third of your flour mix and give that a stir. To this, we'll add half of our milk, and then I'm going to scrape down the bowl and add another third of our flour. And give that another stir, and then we'll add in the rest of our milk. Now for the rest of our flour. Now one final mix. Stop when the flour is mostly combined and finish it off with your spatula. You don't want to over whisk at this point. So just get those last little bits of flour off the sides of the bowl and make sure all of the bottom is combined as well. We're going to set this aside and whisk up our egg whites. To a clean mixing bowl, we're adding 6 egg whites. We're going to whisk these to stiff peaks. That's the stiff peak we're looking for. To our cake batter, we're going to add our egg whites, and I just add them all at once. Now is also when we're going to add in our Funfetti. Gently fold it all together, pulling up from the bottom and bringing that batter up through the egg whites. A perfect, light, fluffy rainbow batter. So I'll pop my cake pan on my scale, set it back to 0, and then start measuring out my cake mix. That's perfect. Let's set it aside and fill the other. I'm just going to smooth out my batter, and we'll give this a tiny little drop on the counter as well. Not too much. We don't want to lose a lot of that egg white that we've beat in there, but just in case there are any large air bubbles. And then the same for this one. I'm using cake strips to make sure my cakes bake nice and evenly. If you've never used these before, they're really inexpensive and they're a great way to get a consistent bake out of your cake. These will take about 30 to 35 minutes in the oven, or until you poke it with a skewer and it comes out clean. I like to rotate mine halfway through, especially if they're on different shelves. I'll switch the shelves and then I'll move them across. My cakes took about 40 minutes in the oven. I tested it with a skewer and the skewer came out clean. You want to make sure not to overbake them. Now I've let these cool completely, and now we can get on to our frosting. 340 grams of salted butter, which is quite soft but not melted, into our bowl. You'll definitely want to use some sort of hand mixer or KitchenAid for this process because it can take quite a while. We're going to whip this butter until it's really creamy, and it will actually change color and almost be white. Now that our butter is completely creamy, I'm going to give it one more scrape so all of the ingredients sit in the middle of the bowl, and then we'll add in our 570 grams of powdered sugar, our 3 to 4 tablespoons of heavy cream, and a little splash of vanilla extract. I'm going to give this one little turn by hand, and then I'll set the mixer to low. To avoid the cloud of powdered sugar all over your kitchen, just throw a tea towel over your mixer for the first few seconds that it's combining. Now that all of the ingredients are starting to come together, you'll turn it up to medium and let it go for a few minutes until it's really light and fluffy. Once you're happy with the consistency of your icing, turn it back to low so that it works out any big air bubbles. I think that's done. I've cut 4 strips of parchment paper and I'll line them around the edge of my cake stand with my cake on top of it. That allows my cake stand to stay nice and clean while I'm icing. Put a nice healthy dollop of your icing for the center of your cake, but you want to make sure you leave enough for all of that frosting on the outside. And then I'm using a palette knife because I find that's the easiest way to ice a cake. But if you want this to be a little bit more rustic, you can use the back of a spoon. Just like that. Make sure it's nice and even, and then we'll get the rest of it frosted up. I like to start on the top of my cake and work my way down. I'm just going to take that icing over the edge so that we can work it down onto the sides of the cake. And now to decorate with a few icing swirls. So I'm just using a large tip with a star pattern. And I like to start at 12 o'clock and then 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and then 9 o'clock, and then 2 splodges in between. And because this icing dries hard, if you want sprinkles on the outside of your cake, now's the best time to do it. And no Black Cat Kitchen birthday would be the same without Zelda and Gordon. The cake itself is moist and rich, but it's also so light and airy because we folded in those egg whites. Funfetti bits are so beautiful throughout it. It gives such a nice playful energy to the cake, and it hasn't bled through into all of that beautiful white cake. You've got just a hint of almond, just to give it that je ne sais quoi. to the cake, and of course my favorite, vanilla, really shines through. And that icing is so smooth and so rich, but it's light because we've whipped that butter for such a long time. All of that sugar has been mixed in really, really well, so you don't get any of those granular bits, and then you get those nice crunchy bits from those nonpareils on the top. I love this cake so much. It reminds me of birthdays in my childhood, and it's just such a nice way to go back to those memories. Thanks so much for joining me on my birthday celebrations. Make sure to like, comment down below, and subscribe. After all, it is my birthday. See you next time.